Hello everyone, my name is Emily Choi and I'm a senior at Blair Academy and I come from Korea. So today I'm going to talk about the Latino community in the United States, and from my presentation I want you guys to take away one thing, that every single immigrant in the United States has a different story to tell. So first I want to start the presentation by sharing a story of Antonio. Antonio comes from El Salvador and he's been living in the United States for 21 years. He currently resides in West New York without his family, and his goal is to see his 5-year-old granddaughter that he has never been able to see in person. So he is a manager at the apartment that I live at, and once he figured out that I love Spanish and that I want to learn more about his culture, he was always willing to share his story, his culture, and his language. So seeing how much he cared about my passion for his culture, I wanted to share his story with all of you today. So let's look at Latin America in general. So first of all, Latin America is a part of America, so technically they're Americans too. But we often call them Latin Americans as if they're a separate group composed of the same people. But that isn't true. As you can see in this map, there are 20 different countries and 6 different dependent territories, and which means that all these countries and areas have different cultures. Spanish is not the only language spoken. There are other languages spoken by the indigenous people by living in the Andes, and there are other languages and ethnicities. So it's not just the same people living there. There are ethnicities that also exist in the United States, in Latin America as well. So every country has different types of music, customs, and foods. And speaking of food, I have pictures of different places from different countries. So the first one is la papusa from El Salvador, and it's a thick corn tortilla. Second, we have moros y cristianos from Cuba, and that's just rice and beans. Next, we have la habichuela con dulce, and that translates to sweet cream of beans. So as you can see, all these types of food are very, very different. Next, let's talk about the Latin Americans who come to the United States to stay here. We have currently over 55 million Hispanic immigrants, which accounts for approximately 17% of the US population. They are actually the youngest racial and ethnic group, which means that they're a crucial part of the United States, and they will be in the near future as well. So most of them come from Mexico, Puerto Rico, El Salvador, and so on, and they're heavily populated in states such as New York, California, and Texas. And before we move on, I wanted to clarify some terms using Hispanic, Latino, and Chicano. Hispanic and Latino are used to describe Latin Americans who are currently residing in the United States, but Chicano is used for Mexican Americans in specific. Now let's put Chicano aside and talk about the Hispanic and Latino. So these words, for the sake of my presentation, I'll be using to describe the people, the immigrants. But a study has shown that the majority of Latin Americans actually do not want to be called Latinos because there is no way to group them as just one culture. So I'm from Korea, and I don't go around telling people, hey, I'm from Asia. I tell them I'm from Korea. So that's basically the same idea. Now, when we talk about Hispanic immigration, one of the things that come to our mind is undocumented immigrants. So for those who are not very familiar with the Latino community, these are some of the major issues that come to our mind. So the questions include, do they pay enough taxes? Do they take away the jobs of the native born? Do they even want to learn English? Do they want to become citizens? Or do they increase the crime rates? And as someone who has been working with the Latino communities around me for several years and have studied these topics extensively, I can assure you that these are all just misunderstandings. To give you one example, undocumented immigrants do pay taxes through income tax and buying products and food, but in return, they don't get any social welfare and government benefits. So why am I up here today? This past summer, I worked for organizations called COFIA, Community Offense in Action, and Make the Road New Jersey. These organizations are located in Palisades Park, and Elizabeth, New Jersey, and they work very closely with the Latino communities around them. And so helping the immigrants learn English, helping them obtain citizenship, or for undocumented immigrants, helping them get driver's license, I learned that they all want to be a part of the United States. And they're all trying their best. So I say that it's our responsibility to make sure that every single one of their voices is being heard. I'm an international student from Korea, and I know what it feels like to stay away from home in a foreign country. So even though our experiences are all different, we can at least make sure that the newcomers are feeling welcomed here. So how do we do that? So how would we do that? If you do a bit of research, you'll soon figure out that in your community, in your individual communities, there are a lot of Latino-oriented organizations that hold different events, fiestas, and meetings for everyone to attend. So you could just show up, celebrate your culture as well as their cultures, and share your stories and listen to theirs as well. And even if you're not willing to go out, there are other ways to expose yourself to the Latino community. There are documentaries such as No Le Digas a Nadie, which is Don't Tell Anyone, and it's a documentary filmed by a daughter of an undocumented woman in New York. And the documentary accurately describes the fear that undocumented immigrants are constantly in. So lastly, I want to finish my presentation by sharing a story of Ruben Morales. Ruben Morales comes from Cuba, and he was a journalist there. So he had a stable job, but when his mother passed away, he decided to come to the United States because he couldn't stand the government separating his friends and families, and he wanted la libertad. So he's very happy with his experience in West New York, and currently he prints t-shirts. He's happy with his job, but he told me that it was very hard for him to start his life anew when he first came, which was about 2 years ago. So this was another story of one of 55+ million immigrants living in the United States, and let's make sure that we're listening to the rest of them as well. Thank you.